I was enthralled by as a kid space and stuff going on above us, and to some extent I pursued it, and then I had problems with drugs and alcohol, and it fell off. And ultimately, I pursued a different path that was simpler. But regardless, like I always looked for that alien kind of thing. And I grew up in a country where it was on a country road, where the night skies are very beautiful, and very open for you to look at and view and see. And I never saw something that made me think, oh, that's a UFO. That's, if anybody would have had that opportunity, I felt like it would have been me. And I was in tune to that stuff. Like, I wanted to see that stuff at one point in time. And it just never happened. And now more than ever with the government declassifying things that they're seeing and stuff. And it's like, I'm more of the angle of what's the angle of the government here, rather than this being something unexplained. More the
time that they released it was interesting.
This isn't aliens, but or this isn't ghosts, but this is something similar, and like we're talking about something that.
But the government declassified it when COVID was like at its peak, so the public barely noticed that things were declassified.
Yeah, people have that angle on it. They certainly do. They wonder why the timing. Maybe it was that it. But have you seen what they declassified? It's not anything that it's not necessarily new. It's just them acknowledging that they don't understand it. That was already known.
Yeah,
and the footage that they showed had already been seen. It's just them saying we can't understand this.
Yeah,
and that means nothing to me.
Yeah,
really. I mean, okay, maybe. Do you trust the federal government? I mean, I guess is what the angle as far as that stuff goes. It's like, well, no, I don't. In a lot of areas, I do. Huh?
I do.
You do?
And I'm the big socialist skeptical of government power.
Yeah.
But no, I don't.
Jimmy Carter reported seeing a UFO.
Okay.
My parents thought they saw one too. I think it was the Northern Lights that they saw.
Sure, I saw the Northern Lights where I grew up.
It's the Northern Lights or Venus.
Swamp gas.
Or a weather balloon.
Yeah, weather balloon.
But the excuses aren't really good excuses. I'm not saying that I even believe in UFOs or anything, but I'm saying that the explanations aren't satisfying as to what they were.
Well, yeah, they either genuinely don't know, or they're being manipulative, right?
Yeah,
that's how I feel about it anyway, and so they saw these objects that were moving at speeds that are hard to fathom, going not only in the air but in space, and underwater, and they caught this supposedly on camera, and some of it I've seen the footage of some of it, and it's bizarre, but I just there's this era of like I don't trust my government, and I wonder what's their angle. I mean, and some of it, the misinformation is so prevalent that I just wonder if it's not intentional.
Maybe the sightings are intentional misstatements.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
To get you to doubt government, or to doubt that you can be part of a system of democracy that can affect government.
I absolutely think that's an intentional purpose. And so I just try to avoid it, honestly. Like, try to stick to the here and now, all that stuff.
So I saw a UFO when I was in kindergarten. It was summertime. I was supposed to be going to sleep. Look out my window. I looked out my window, and it's still, the sun's still up because it's summertime, and you make kids go to bed before the sun's down.
Too early.
Because you're evil parents.
Yeah, parents. Terrible.
Yeah. But I looked out the window. What I saw was not what you classically imagine as a UFO. What I saw is what like a little kid would imagine as a satellite that's supposed to be floating out in space. So I saw this satellite floating in the air, like, metal with like the dish on it and the. And I just thought it was weird at the time, and I never really thought much about it. But years afterward, I kept thinking about it, like, gosh, that was weird. As I got older, I was like, that's like weird thing to see. Like, you don't normally see that. I can't explain it or anything. I definitely saw it. But all this talk on UFOs brings to mind Jacques Vallée. Jacques Vallée. I don't know. He's a French writer. He's my favorite author about UFOs. And he believes, after decades of research in his books, that the UFO sightings are not from outer space, that it's a psychological thing that's happening. And he believes, and I don't know, it's open to interpretation. Is it a psychological experience and it's something outside of us that's reaching us psychologically, or it's a subconscious thing that's coming out? It's coming from one of the two ways. But because and in his arguments, these sightings have been happening as long as mankind's been around.
Sure.
Biblical stories, and then the fairies in England and things like that, and it just became a science fiction thing when we left the fantasy of fairies and things behind. But they always communicate, like when people have the third encounters, close encounter of the third kind, where you come into contact with the alien or whatever, they always talk nonsense, and very strange things, and I don't know, and it's very similar to the nonsense that the fairies and the elves and things like that would say to people, and the angels would say to people. And so that's really all I'm getting at, is his take is that it's a psychological manifestation.
Might be similar to your friend 0110011001001.
But I mean, it's happening. Carl Jung. I mentioned him earlier, and Carl Jung did a study on it. And it's big enough that enough people are studying that it's kind of hard to ignore. But everyone that hasn't seen it is kind of like, well, I'm not going to believe it until I see it.
Yeah. It's hard to, without having that actual interaction with one or anything actual physical in this realm, it's hard to justify outside of being some manifestation. And speaking of ghosts in that regard too, I mean, I think they fall into that category. Yeah. It's like that face I saw. Well, years later, working in psychology, you in some of the classes I've taken, you learn that there's part of your brain that looks for faces. It looks for faces, and because that's the interactions that we have. That's part of who we are. That we want to be amongst our own kind, and we look for our own kind naturally.
Yeah,
and it's a part of our brains, and so like seeing a face in something that wouldn't necessarily, or seeing anything
in toast or on a pattern on a floor or stains on
you're
the wall.
Looking for those things.
I noticed a big difference one day, and I wish I'd written it down or could remember. But there was a big difference in the patterns. I noticed that I was seeing faces and something human when a pattern had a certain quality, and then I would see an animal or something. Or I could make out an animal more easily out of the stains in the floor or whatever it was.
Yeah.
When it was a certain, maybe a different symmetry or a different roughness, but it was with the clouds. What was it?
We're always looking for something that's familiar to us.
Yeah.
Something we can relate to.
And part of that psychological phenomenon with the UFOs that Jacques was talking about too, it's more this thing that we're experiencing, and the reason they're talking nonsense is coming back to me. The reason they're talking nonsense and we're seeing these things is because it's so far out of our experience that our brain is adjusting it to be something more familiar.
Mm.